Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This is Expelled from Astral Guide School and I'm going to get right into it. It's been a tough couple of days for me. I've been going through a lot and I've been dealing with a lot of anger too. But I'm going to try to maintain my equilibrium so I can tell you guys what has transpired as accurately and hopefully as unemotionally as I can. But remember how I told you that I was having trouble contacting my angel and that he was dealing with an emergency? Well, a few days ago I was finally able to establish contact. And I met him in an area that was kind of out in the wilderness, which was kind of weird. We'd never met in like a wilderness atmosphere before. Um, but I felt the strong signal when I left my body, so I just homed in on it. And when I found myself there uh, and I regained consciousness, my angel was there looking very worn and very concerned. And I asked him what was wrong, what was going on. He told me that there was something going on with the council, that numerous council members had resigned, others had been forced off the council. And once again, this is a council of essentially intelligent beings who represent races in the galaxy. Many of them are spacefaring, but some are not. Some are very spiritually based. I mean, they travel through consciousness, much like astral projection. At any rate, the council had been undergoing some sort of a revolutionary change, and that a lot of policies were changing, and that our Astral Guide School was being closed down and was under investigation, and that everyone involved was being personally interviewed, was the term that he used, but it wasn't the real English word. Basically, what it meant was being interviewed like the Gestapo interviewed people, that type of an interview. And that my name had come up frequently, and that the instruction was when I appeared on the astral plane again that I was to report to the council for my interview. I asked him, is the master behind this? And he said he didn't know. He suspected that his plotting was going on somewhere in the background and that it was responsible for some of this, but he couldn't say for sure. He had been too busy trying to defend our school, but it seemed like the conservatives were taking over and pretty much eliminating the progressive schools. Now, I'll define those terms for you again, and please keep that has nothing to do with the politics of the day. The terms are just the best that I can come up with to capture the philosophies involved. Just real briefly, again, my school was a progressive school, and our philosophy was that it was the job of a guide to actively encourage and to advise the people who we were assigned to so that they could make the best choices possible when it came to reincarnation and other very important decisions like that. However, there was an opposite school, which, for the lack of a better term, I call conservative. And they believe that the reincarnation process and the decisions surrounding it should be strictly hands off, and that you should give the soul the options available and let them make their own selection as to timing, as to what bodies, what have you. And indeed, not even to necessarily encourage them. Now, if they start getting weak on the astral and maybe even risk falling to the subastral, you're not even supposed to interfere then. That's their philosophy. And anyway, it seems like now the council was pushing towards that end of the scale, and which is why our school was indeed under attack. So I asked for this interview. I mean, do I get a lawyer or how does it work? He said, no. He says, I don't know exactly what they're going to interview you about, but I suspect it's going to be about past actions, and then they're going to make a judgment. I said, well, will I get a chance to respond at all? He said, I hope they let you at least respond, but don't count on anything you say having much influence on their decision. Because I've heard stories of others in our school who were interviewed, and it sounded to them like the decision had already been made, that nothing they said had any effect on the proceedings. So I said, well, I guess I don't have any choice then. When do I go in front of the council for my interrogation? He said, well, right now is as good as any time. So I said, fine. Next thing I knew, I was standing there in the council chambers, and I didn't recognize any of the faces from the counselors that I'd seen before. The only face I recognized was the one I didn't want to recognize, and that was the master, who now, instead of being on the sidelines as a advisor, now seemed to be one of the council. And I knew that did not bode well for yours truly if he had anything to say about it. The lead counselor started talking, and I'll translate this really into the best type of English I can. All this transpired in a matter of seconds because it went back and forth telepathically. However, we have to use language, so it's going to take longer. And I'm going to try to put it in a format where it makes sense, because telepathy is, it's different, and it certainly condenses things down remarkably. So I'm going to put it in a format that hopefully is more understandable. Anyway, he started out with a good old. You ever hear of the crap sandwich, where they say something good about you, and then they tell you all the stuff that's bad that they really want to talk about, and then they say something good at the end? Yeah, that's kind of how this started. He said the council appreciated everything that you've done, and they appreciate my special status and all the sacrifices that I have made. And I didn't say anything. I just stood there waiting for them to get started on what they really wanted to talk about. And I didn't need some superfluous flattery anyway. They said that we want to talk to you about a number of actions that you've taken on the astral plane that we are very concerned about. And this started sounding to me like a human relations interview. You know, like the kind of human relations interview you get before they let you go. That's kind of what it sounded like to me. And I said, fine, what do you want to talk about? And they said, well, the first case that we want to discuss is the person who you called Ralph the truck driver. If you want to refer to that episode, it was Astral Guide School number 2, The Reluctant Soul. And this was a guy who had set himself up in this little cottage and had refused to listen to any guides to help him reincarnate, and his daughter needed him on Earth. And we were given the task of convincing him. And a number of folks had tried before me until I got up there, and I told a little bit of a white lie, perhaps, that his daughter needed him, and then he decided that he was going to reincarnate to help her. Now, it was a lie in that I don't know for sure. I didn't talk to his daughter, but I made that assumption, and I saw that that was something that he cared about. And as I recall, I got a good number of negative feedback on that video to begin with. But there were still many people who agreed with me. At any rate, they said that I had violated his free will and that I lied in helping him to convince to reincarnate. My defense was it was for his own good. He was stagnating in that cottage, and his daughter was pregnant. Her boyfriend had left her, and if he didn't go back and become her child, it was looking like she would end up back on heroin again. And yes, I was a little free with the truth on that one because I believed truly that it was in all their best interest for him to return. And that he was just stagnating in that cottage, essentially just hiding there, holing up, and not growing, just hiding. So that was my defense. They let me say my piece, and much like my angel had said, it didn't seem to have any great effect on him. So they said the second count was the person you call Mary. And if you recall, she was the woman who had grown up in Ireland about 150 years ago, and she had been abused by her husband, whom she finally poisoned to stop the abuse. And then she felt so guilty she committed suicide and had eventually sunk so low that she was essentially in almost a comatose state in the subastral. I rescued her and helped her reincarnate. And I gave her a series of choices that were available to her based on her soul growth. And in that episode, I received some criticism from Astral Club members because one of her choices was, and I considered by far the best choice, was to reincarnate in the body of a man who would be born very soon and would grow up and might end up being homosexual, living in modern day Ireland. And I remember I got some pushback by Astral Club members saying that if I had told her a little bit more about, what this possible homosexuality concerned, that she probably wouldn't have chosen that one and probably would have ended up at the end of the day not choosing the single mother either, because in her prejudicial philosophy, she would have looked down on that person. She probably would have chosen the first one, which was essentially putting herself right back into a same type of abusive relationship with a neglectful father and a poverty stricken family that she had experienced in her last lifetime. And I thought that would not be a good idea for her to relive that again. So I, soft pedaled the gay end of things, and she ended up choosing that lifetime. So my defense was, look, I thought her outmoded prejudices would have led her back into making the same mistakes by choosing another bad life choice that would have trapped her in that same cycle of abuse that she'd suffered previously, and that would not push her forward. They replied that it wasn't my decision to make, that if it was her free will decision to suffer through another life like that and perhaps even repeat the same mistakes again, that was her decision, and I should not have interfered. Well, there didn't seem to be any point for me to answer again. They seemed to be very sure of themselves, so I waited for the next accusation. This one surprised me though a little bit. They said that I interfered with the culture and the religion of the planet that I called Amphibia. Now, at that, I lost my temper a little bit. I said, wait a minute. This council sent me there with the mission to stop live sacrifices. And that's what I did with what I thought was the minimum amount of interference in their religion and culture. And when I got back, that council at least had praised me for what I had accomplished. Their reply was, well, that may be, but upon reviewing the situation, we feel you did not have the right to interfere in that culture and that you should have refused that particular mission. Well, at that point, I knew I was done. These people, this was a trial that was already decided even before I showed up. So I just sat there silently. What else could I say? The last one, though, really got to me. They said, worst of all, you have shared council business with lower life forms on your so-called Astral Club website program. Well, I said, firstly, humans are not lower life forms. They show great promise for the future. Besides, the council was aware that I was sharing this information. I've even obtained some future guide school recruits in the process. They shrugged it off. They did not see any benefit in my sharing this type of information with people here on Astral Club. In fact, I may even get in trouble for creating this video. And you know what? I don't care. I'll record it again. I don't care. I'll make other episodes. So it didn't take long. Like I said, telepathically, this whole thing took seconds. I'm drawing it out because that's what we have to do here in the physical. You want to know what the decision was? It was quite easy because the decision was decided even before I showed up. They told me that I was formally expelled from Astral Guide School and that indeed my whole school was to be closed down and disbanded. But then they took mercy on me and they said, for now we will not suppress your ability to astral project, but consider yourself on probation. And they said, you will be watched. And then they said, you are dismissed. And with that, I found myself back in my body, furious about this whole situation. Believe me, I have calmed down now substantially. I have waited a few days so that I could calm down. I sense the master's hand in all of this. He's on the council now. Now, he didn't talk, but he was there the whole time. And I sense that he's behind what happened with the council and that he's behind this whole frame up of my fellow students and myself. But for right now, I don't know what I can do about it. But I can tell you this. I'm going to stay alert and I'm going to watch what I do on the astral plane. But there's other folks on the astral plane who think like I do. And there's plenty of folks here at Astral Club who think like I do too as well, who are also powerful, whether they astral project or not. So I'm down right now, but I do not consider myself out. Well, if you liked that um, experience, hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'd be extremely interested in any questions, comments, thoughts that you might have about this whole situation. And if you want to contribute to Patreon, there'll be a link in the description. And as always, I'm Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.